Yeah, no, I was actually in the Caribbean. I promised my family a vacation for 2 years. And then we finally walk in the hotel room and the phone rings and it's Spielberg. And he says, I'm sending the Warner Brothers jet for you.
Oh, wow.
And I said, wait, I just got here. I need 3 days. Okay.
Well, this is Red Band Podcast, baby. Movies, music, conspiracies, deep existential crises. It's all inside and it's all unfiltered. So let's get started.
Okay, welcome Red Band to our holiday episode here. We've got our two special guests, really. My good friend Matt, who you heard last week in the SpiderMan episode, and our extra special guest, director of Jingle All The Way, Brian Levant, is on the show. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Brian has quite a career under his belt. He's written for shows like Happy Days, Mork and Mindy. He's directed Are We There Yet?, The Flintstones, Beethoven, of course, Jingle All The Way, which is why we're here. And Matt and I, we took his sitcom boot camp class, which is how we met him. And then flash forward a couple years, and here we are.
Yes, no, my very first class.
That's right, yeah.
Standouts.
I remember going into that class, and I wasn't officially signed up for it, but I went the first day. And I left, and my mind was blown just from the first day. And I called Estevan, and I was like, dude, you got to get in this class now because this class is amazing. And then you let us both in. So thank you for letting us in that class.
No, it's been very good for me. The last time we were live in person, you guys also directed and edited the performance of that year's boot camp. We should explain what the sitcom boot camp is. Like the guys, I am a graduate of the University of New Mexico, class of 74. And 48 years after I first arrived there, I had always come back ever since my career justified having something to teach students virtually annually. And at some point, they asked if I would teach a class there. And what started as a lark has become a very important part of my life. And what we do is we take a very small group of motivated film students, and in 6 weeks and 42 and a half hours of class time, we create, develop, write, rewrite, and rewrite an original half-hour situation comedy. And we put together a cast featuring student and local professionals and put on a show, a staged reading, and it's been a very successful program. And I'm very proud to have you guys as alumni of it.
Yeah, we're so glad we were able to take it. And it's definitely the class I think we took the most away from. So
You're the ones who stole the computer?
So we are talking about Jingle All The Way, like I mentioned. And it's actually, the timing worked out great. This is the 25th anniversary of the movie's release. You were just at an event a few days ago celebrating it. From what I remember, I believe you told me that when it first came out, it was kind of a flop, right?
Kind of. That's kind. This was a major disappointment. This was a major studio, A-list star, A-list producer, A-list up and coming.
Yeah.
I got one hand on the list, and because of Jingle All The Way, it slid off. And it wasn't long before I'd be doing stuff direct to video after that. But it underperformed. That it was an $80 million movie with a big ad campaign, small tie-ins, and I could say that the competition was much better armed for the fight. 101 Dalmatians. Space Jam came out on either side of us. Films that had been in planning stages, in marketing stages for years, had tremendous product and promotional tie-in support, which we put out a Turbo Man doll, not with Kenner, Hasbro, Mattel, that was the biggie, Tiger Toys, who were primarily known for handheld video games. Which are today's video games are like abacuses are to calculators. And it was a Walmart exclusive and it did not take off. But over time, somehow this film has morphed into a cult classic and into a genuine holiday classic somehow. And this year, in our 25 years after it debuted, we did succeed in having a huge audience finally, and even more important, the Funko toy company put out a new exact reproduction of the original Turbo Man.
Ooh.
And a Walmart exclusive. And this time it flew off the shelves. It was the hottest toy in America. I had to buy one on eBay. It was so hard. Yeah. And then they came back. They went and printed up a bunch more. So now it's easy to get.
You should have gotten one for free. I can't believe you had to get yours off of eBay.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I just bought the line of 5, soon to be 6 Funko Pop Jingle All The Way figures as well. And it's a thrill to have something that seemed to be destined, a film that was destined to become guitar picks, morph into a beloved institution, and to finally see lines of toys based on it that are finding even greater favor with that audience. And as a toy collector, it's a godsend. I just got, there's a guy in Scotland, Ray Gun Cards, who makes beautiful limited edition trading card sets of things that he loves. He just sent me several packs of his Jingle All The Way wax packs with gum.
Oh,
Ray Gun Cards, at Ray Gun Cards, or Ray Gun Trading Cards, one of the two. I'm not sure off the top of my head which one, on Instagram. Please check him out. Great stuff. And over the years, I've been besieged by fans sending me fan art, coffee cups with Turbo Man, handmade Booster and Turbo Man figures. And you know, it's something that was a bit of an embarrassment is really turned into something that I'm very proud of. And I had not seen the film in a couple of years. And this time through watching it, number one, I didn't fall asleep, which happens a lot. You see something several thousand times on a daily basis. You know, sometimes, you know, it gets the better of you. But this, I was attentive. And the things that always bother me, the one shot that isn't color corrected properly. And from the final, in those days, you weren't color correcting digitally. You had a guy who was like, give it a point of yellow, give it a point of red, you know, and it was very primitive. And, you know, there was one shot, it was horribly, too much light. And so he said, bring it a point down. Got it. He brought it a point up. So it's much too bright and doesn't cut with the rest of the shots in the sequence. That didn't even bother me. Well, now it's bothering me a little. But it didn't bother me that time.
And which shot was that?
You'll watch carefully on the parade scene. You'll see it. All of a sudden, you need sunglasses for a second.
Yeah.
But I was reminded not of the pain, but of the pleasure and the success. And I think the best measure of that is the fact that I was given one of I think we made 3 of the 24-inch Turbo Man for the parade sequence. And it sat on a shelf in my garage for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want to look at it every day. Mm-hmm. And 5 years ago, you could see the what started as a sprinkle of affection that, you know, when I spend a lot of time on campuses and people used to come up very shyly and say, will you autograph my Jingle All The Way? And they'd hand me their well-worn VHS copies and say, oh, my family watches it every Christmas. And that sprinkle, that mist of affection really turned into a tsunami over the last few years. And I'm not sure why. The film is still the same. And actually, I prefer the director's cut, which Fox cleverly labeled the Family Fun Edition. Available on the Blu-ray, and if they ever come out with a 4K, whatever that is, they'll include it as well. But you know, we overreacted, I think, at our previews and cut a little too much, and we restored some things that doesn't change the story or anything, just adds to certain scenes and moments, just a little bit. And I'm much happier with that. But anyways, getting back to Turbo, so I finally got a really nice plexiglass box stand built for my office and put him right across from my desk so I can look at him every day. We got a lot of catching up to do,
Oh, yeah. The producer of this movie that I saw was Chris Columbus.
That's correct.
And so anyone who doesn't know, he's directed the first 2 Home Alones, first 2 Harry Potters. Quite the career there. What was that like working with him? Because he had done Home Alone before this.
Oh, yes. Which still, I believe, is the highest grossing American comedy of all time.
Oh, wow.
At over I believe it's something to the effect of $557 million.
Wow.
Yes. No, it was an incredible film. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. So Fox bought the script from Randy Kornfeld, who was a reader at the studio. And his experiences trying to get his daughter his son? I think it was a Cabbage Patch doll that he couldn't get, and that inspired the story. And he said it in Minneapolis because he was thinking of Mall of America, not thinking that we would ever go there and shoot as we did. And he wrote it basically for someone like Steve Martin. The studio gave it to Chris. Chris thought, this would be good for like Danny Stern. The studio had a different idea. They thought they could reteam Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's such a good idea that they're doing it again now. They're doing triplets with Tracy Morgan.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Arnold said yes, and DeVito said no.
Okay.
And they said, all right, we'll go with Arnold. And that's when they started looking for someone foolish enough to shoot this. And I was sent the script, and on page 1, it starts with a montage of manufacturing Turboman dolls. I thought, oh my God, this is great. I'm going to have Turboman. I'm going to have a whole shelf filled with Turbomans. And I do. I have to get a bigger shelf now. Seriously, I've run out of room in my Turboman shelf. It's going for two slots, like the Flintstones. And Happy Days. And of course, we never shot that scene because the first thing we found out when we began production is it would take over 6 months to get a toy into production. Therefore, we would be done and in post before they would be ready to roll. So that was sad. But I did fly up to San Francisco and had a really good initial meeting. And things moved along pretty well. I think our comedy sensibilities were very aligned. I think that there were fissures that festered a bit during production because our process was very, very different. Chris is very cerebral, plans, very, the attention to detail is phenomenal. And I'm not saying mine isn't, it's just in a different way and different, very different energy that, I come from sports and the actors that I've worked best with have also been, come from athletic background, Jackie Chan, Arnold, Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., and we sort of approach it like the big game. We're going to go out on there in the field and we're going to give it our all and we're going to figure it out and we're going to make it happen. Directors pass on actors, actors pass on directors. And actors, Steve Martin, Eugene Levy, we weren't working in the same space, and it was obvious in meetings with them, and so I think that was a bit of a problem. And then the other problem is, to me, to make a Christmas movie was an excuse to put a marching band in red vinyl Santa suits,
Right,
yeah. All video, make the parade floats, design all that stuff, the Santa warehouse and the toys and everything. That's what I saw. And to Chris, it was the holiest day of the year. So a bit of a dichotomy. And for a long time, as a result, I was offered other holiday films. And, I sort of stuck by the mantra, Jews shouldn't direct Christmas movies. and then a friend of mine's son's fiance, we're all having breakfast one morning, and I had been offered Christmas Story 2. I said, well, Jews shouldn't make Christmas movies. She goes, yes, but Jews wrote all the great Christmas songs. And you're right. And I took the movie and had a lot of fun doing that with Danny Stern.
Of course, full circle.
Yes.
I guess you answered what I was thinking a couple of different ways. You said what drew you to this was maybe putting out those Turbo Man dolls. You said one thing that drew you to this movie was, doing a Christmas parade, making the floats, being able to do that kind of pageantry in the film. But I guess I overall I was wondering, like, what else drew you to making this movie? Because just from what little bit I read about you and the little bit I listened to you talking on Gilbert Gottfried's podcast, it seems like, the growing up and really enjoying the pop culture and the toy culture and all that stuff was really something personal to you. Like, was that all part before, like, the original script, or did you go in and add more heart to that?
The script evolved quite a bit during the process, and it was a rushed process. But I think sometimes that's good, because writing is like gas in a bottle. Will expand to however much space you give it. But what I was most interested in, I'm a pop culture guy. This year, next year at this time, you'll be able to have someone buy for you or buy for someone else my book, My Life in Toys, which is basically my entire collection in book form. It's a museum beneath covers, and it's beautiful and huge, coming out from G Editions out in September of 22. Mark your calendars, collectors. But the other thing that really attracted me is I'm also a student of comedy. And this film harkened back to the earliest kind of silent films and silent comedies that I was introduced to at New Mexico, which were basically chase scenes. One long, exhausting chase for something. And that's what spoke to me, the fact that you could do these enormous, over-the-top set pieces with an action star and his attending stunt team, who, the people with the skills to make these things happen, make them convincing, make them realistic. And it really never flags. There's like 3 points in the movie where we like stop and catch our breath. And other than that, it is frantic from start to finish. And I love that energy and the pace. And, you can say Arnold is miscast because, Arnold becoming a superhero isn't like a great leap. It's a hopscotch.
Sure, yeah.
And it might have been more interesting, but I don't think that they like the way he stalked Predator is the way he stalked Turbo Man.
That's a great comparison.
That it was a matter of survival.
He has such an interesting arc, even though, like you said, it's a hopscotch for him to become this superhero. It's cool to see his character arc from how he's this dad that's kind of too busy with his work at the beginning, and then it comes full circle at the end where he, gets the toy and does everything he can for his son and his family.
He learns the message of Christmas.
My question to you is there a moment that is like your favorite moment while on set when you were filming this movie? Is there a particular scene that sticks in your head that you were like, oh, it was just super fun to be on set that day, or this is my favorite scene?
I hate to disappoint people about how fun filmmaking is or not. That what you have to appreciate, and you guys are filmmakers, you recognize this, that every minute of every day, you feel the same way as you do when you think you're going to miss your plane. You're just racked and twisted inside, and it's a difficult battle every day. And to tackle the kind of major physical set pieces and what we were trying to accomplish on a daily basis was so ultra challenging that it was just so all encompassing, and it really becomes kind of a war between you and time and money. And what didn't help in that battle was the fact that your star, whose life was going from movie to movie to movie, and he didn't want to be working 15, 16-hour days. He didn't want to be getting home at 3 a.m. and have to get up at 5 and start it all over again. He was on a 12-hour portal to portal, which means on location from the time you are picked up in the morning until you are dropped off at home, which includes time to get to the set, wherever that may be, from wherever you're staying, and your makeup and hair and wardrobe. And if the day started with him in the Turbo Man suit, well, that's an extra 45 minutes. Then if he has to go to the bathroom after he gets into the suit, it's an extra 15. So you can see the kind of pressure that you're under, because he's in virtually every shot of the movie. I think there's 2 or 3 tiny scenes without him, with the wife and kid and the karate class. Other than that, we are in the saddle with him. And so the time pressure was always enormous. Plus the fact that on the flip side, normally on a film like this, you would have 35, 40 weeks to do post-production. We did it in 12.
Ooh, wow.
Oh man.
Well, that's the bottleneck they created when they decide to do a movie, in January, February, whatever, and it's coming out in 10 months. So many nights were spent beginning to lock the film, because in order to do the CGI shots, you have to have the footage has to be locked. And in those days, this was still, as I said, timed manually, not digitally. It had to be, every shot had to be timed in advance as well of seeing the completed scene. So we're very lucky to have Victor Kemper, an incredible former president of the American Society Cinematographers, still with us at 96 years old. He just turned 70 when we were doing Jingle, and an incredible amount of work with people like John Cassavetes and Sidney Lumet. I mean, giants, and he was very much a New York guy. Dog Day Afternoon, that kind of stuff. Very rugged, naturalistic, and he also did Beethoven with me, and later a pilot. And it was always a pleasure to have somebody so knowledgeable and yet so calm and assured. Well, on Beethoven once, he lit a scene outdoors at night with one light. I said, "How do you light a scene with one light?" He goes, "You got to know where to put it."
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
and so we had some really fine people. And my first AD, George Parra, would later become a producer as well, and we did many films together after that. And Russell Bobbitt, who did the props, now does virtually every Marvel movie and creates all Iron Man's stuff, and the Green Goblin's surf, all that stuff. And Tim Flattery, who designed. With me and my storyboard artist, Daryl Henley, we designed the Turbo Man suit, which is a story in and of itself, truly. And his work, he's done everything from Thanos' gloves to Batmobiles, any high concept sci-fi superhero movie. Check it, timflattery.com. Take a look at his stuff. He helped with it. He did much of the initial design. He's an amazing concept artist. And he also supervised the production of the suit and fitting it not just for Arnold, but for Dan Reardon, who played Turbo Man in the actual TV show that the toy grew from. A really solid bunch. And we had great, I can't remember his name right now, but our special effects man was exceptional. And I tell you a funny thing. At first, we thought we were going to have real flames coming out of the jetpack. And we soon realized that strapping a bomb to the future governor of California was a part.
Right. Yeah, just because you had mentioned Marvel a second ago, they're obviously known now for doing post-credit scenes. That's like their thing. And I know, I think I saw that Kevin Feige was inspired by that after seeing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, because that was one of the first.
Yes, that was the first, as far as I know. And for those who's never stayed till the end of Ferris Bueller, after the credits, you cut to him. He's in the shower washing his hair. He goes, "What are you doing here? The movie's over. Go home."
Classic.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, it wasn't Samuel Jackson getting kidnapped or something. And now, and so in the original version of Jingle All the Way, there is a post-credit scene. Mm-hmm. And in the director's cut, the Family Fun edition, that has been placed at the end of the movie, so that no one goes, "Huh? What? There's more? Come on, let's go. It's cold out."
What inspired that? Like, was that your decision to do a post-credit scene or put it there?
Yes, we thought we were really cool to do that. And generally we were just wrong. And I also think the studio thought that, well, you get out on such a high and Arnold being carried off and into Brian Setzer's Jingle All the Way. They thought that was a great way to go out and that's a nice little joke. But had the film been as successful then as it is today, that would have been the basis for the sequel and what the scene, for those who haven't stayed past the end of the credits or seen the Family Fun edition, Arnold returns home, puts the star on the tree. Everybody's happy. His wife hugs him and says, "You went through all that just to get something for Jamie. And it makes me wonder, yes, what did you get for me?" And we do another one of those rocket zooms into his eyes and show his panic and go out. And so had there been another film, I think that would have been where we started. And sure, there was someone else looking for the same necklace or earrings or whatever we would have come up with. But I probably better. There is a sequel that has nothing to do with Jingle All the Way. There is Jingle All the Way 2 with Larry the Cable Guy. I've never seen it, but I will say this. From what I've read about it, just in synopsis, I said to myself, well, that's a good story. A guy whose daughter is being raised by the wife's second husband, who's very wealthy, and the father is trying to compete with that man on Christmas and going overboard to try and show his little girl that he loves her. So I thought, well, if you're going to do something like that, that's a pretty good premise. Although I haven't seen it, and those who have say don't watch it. But they're telling to me, I'm sure watch it if it floats your boat.
Sure. Yeah, we tried, Matt and I, the other day to watch it.
Did you?
Like, well, yeah.
Did it float your boat?
Not well. No, this is. I was surprised because I was expecting it to be really bad, really horrible, and it's not great. But
it's not the worst thing.
It's not the worst.
Like you said, the premise, that story, the structure is there. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they just didn't dive into it quite enough.
Yeah, they did more. It's more like, I don't know if you've seen Deck the Halls with Danny DeVito and Matthew Broderick. It's more like that, where it's like they're competing to see who can outdo the other, versus the essence of Jingle All the Way is trying to get the one coveted item that no one else can get. And I think they kind of missed that in this. Well, they started getting to it, but by the time I turned off the movie, they still hadn't really gotten into it.
Which was what, 22 minutes?
Yeah, right.
I want to know what your attention span is.
So were you approached at all to do Jingle All the Way 2, or did they come to you for input or anything?
No, there have been, primarily as a result of the monstrous amounts of Beethoven sequels, more sequels made of my films than I've made films. And I only did a couple of them. But I was asked at one point to reboot Beethoven for the division that keeps churning out these ones. And I really came up with a really nice story, kind of a Sullivan's Travels with Beethoven, where he escapes his mean trainer from the animal show up at the Universal Studios tour and runs across the highway and up in the hills, and a little girl finds him and takes him in and hides him and all. And it was a really, really nice story. And they said, well, can't you do it with Cheech Marin? And I said, God, it's not the story I want to do, and walked away from that one.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about that? I mean, that is where we're at, right? We are constantly remaking old products, and it does seem like a lot of the time we are missing the mark of what made the original good. Is that kind of where you stand on this?
Well, I'm very much a purist. I can take some of the blame for the cycles of revivals and stuff, because in 1980 I began pitching a Leave It to Beaver revival. My favorite show growing up ran 1957 to 63 and endlessly first on Saturday mornings, and then in syndication to local channels, and still is playing on MeTV. I think there's really like 3 shows that maybe 4 counting the Honeymooners, you can find on TV from the 1950s. You got I Love Lucy, you got The Twilight Zone, you got Beaver, and that's really about it.
Yeah,
which is kind of amazing. And there's a reason. It was a beautifully written and acted and heartfelt show that speaks to the child in all of us. And I wanted to see what it all started when I was 16, watching an episode of Leave It to Beaver at a friend's house after school in a cold Chicago winter afternoon. And I said to myself, what are those guys doing today? And that minor thought turned into a 25-year obsession. And we succeeded in doing the highest rated movie of the week of the year for CBS, and then 5 seasons of shows at first on the Disney Channel, and then for WTBS, and then I did a feature as well. But up until that point, the first Star Trek movie was a lot like Jingle All the Way. It had everything going for it, except it didn't click. It just didn't do it. And that was corrected when they brought in, oh my goodness, Nicholas Meyer, who had written the 7.5% Solution, which was a wonderful continuation of Sherlock Holmes. Somebody who understood how to take what people love about something and apply it to another era. And we tried to be as faithful to the emotion of Leave It to Beaver. Not our substance was much different, much more contemporary. Parents were very fallible. We had great kids and great chemistry. But the success of that helped to launch 1,000 ships. Starting with, I made the mistake of telling the head of development at Paramount that I was working on a Leave It to Beaver revival movie, and it was about him coming home after he got divorced and restarting his life as a single parent with the support of his mother and his older brother. And he heard that, and the next day he had Sherwood Schwartz in, and the next thing you know, he's selling The Brady Brides to CBS as an hour series. And from there, it just kind of metastasized, and it's sad in some ways that original thought doesn't come first, but this is kind of endemic of what's happened in the industry, that particularly in the feature world, that the studios aren't just in the movie business. They're in many other businesses. And they want product that can support not just the movie division, but the licensing, the tours, everything else. And that's why they tend to trade in the proven. Right now there's an idea that Kevin Conran, who the man who figured out how to create the first entirely CGI film, Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, was also its production designer and costume designer. So talented. We've been working on for years and years something, and we finally said we have to prove to people that this works before they'll look at it differently. So we're pursuing it as a graphic novel right now, and if it works, then we have IP, whatever. What does that mean?
Intellectual property. Yep.
Intellectual. That's what I couldn't think of. I kept thinking interesting property, and then maybe people will look at it a little bit different. But and it's also they don't take the chances anymore. Would people go out on a limb to make Star Wars today? Had Star Wars never happened?
Those are great questions.
And when something works as spectacularly as the first Iron Man, you bet you're going to do Captain America, and you bet you're going to do Spider-Man, and you bet you're gonna. Who is this Cheng Feng or whatever his name is? Anyone ever read that comic?
Never read the comic.
No.
I saw the movie, but haven't read the comic.
Is it really a Marvel character? Or are they just trying to crash China?
There we go. That's the kind of energy we're looking for on Red Band Podcast right there, Brian. Well, I guess my question to you then would be, being someone who's on the inside, how in the hell would you get a good original film made nowadays? Or is it kind of a hopeless situation?
Well, this is what I tell people, and I tell these guys all the time, that don't depend on anybody else to make your movie.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 2,800 films submitted I think it's like 5,600, 2,600 from outside America. These are people who put every dime they had on credit cards and figured out ways to make a movie and bring what they wanted to the world and try and figure out how to get it to find an audience. They're not depending on other people to gift them $80 million to make their dream project. You got to make it happen today. There are so many outlets, and I could give you so many examples of people who have done just that. I'll give you a classic example is my friend Rick Kopp, who I've worked with on numerous TV shows and movies. And he's gay, and he created with three of his friends, including Ben Zook, who was a wonderful improvisational actor, and his boyfriend. They made Where the Bears Are. They bought a camera for $5,800. They spent $25,000, and they made a Scooby-Doo gay murder mystery. and they released it for free on Vimeo in little 6-minute bites. And at the end of that, they cut it all together. And they sold it to cable networks. They sold it to home video. They sold it overseas, everywhere. And for $25,000, they made $800,000 on the first one, and they made 7 more of these, and made a lot of money.
Wow.
And there's so many stories like that. If you want it, you'll figure out a way. But the studios, I believe, let's go back to 2019, because everything after that, it's not a fair comparison box office wise. But there were, how many studio films do you think were released in 2019? All together, every Lionsgate, Relativity, everybody.
60. No?
115.
Okay.
Now, consider the fact that in 1988, both Warner Brothers and Disney made over 40 each.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man. Wow.
So you get a pick. Yeah, they're making half the movies. They're taking zero chances, if at all possible.
Yeah.
They don't want, and who can blame them when a superhero movie is costing $300 million or more?
Right.
Or even Netflix making a Red Notice, $300 million to make that film.
That film exploded. I mean,
right.
I think it's one of the highest watched on Netflix.
Yes, it's one of the most watched. But to me, I'd rather watch Money Heist.
Sure,
right.
I couldn't make it through all at once. It seemed like sugary breakfast cereal. It seemed so prepackaged.
I agree.
Not that it wasn't well made, well acted, or anything. It just seemed like highlights from other movies.
Yeah.
strung together.
Yeah. A lot of people say that Hollywood's in this mode now where they have a formula and they just plug in different actors and different things. Do you kind of agree with that?
There's always been people who claimed that they had the success. And then there was Ryan Kavanaugh, who founded Relativity Films, who raised hundreds of millions of dollars by saying that he had a computer formula that was immune to failure. And 3 years later, the company went bankrupt.
Oh, great. Yeah. Absolutely.
So there is no formula. And the great showman took chances, went out on a limb, trusted talent. Do you think Warren Beatty would have been able to make Reds today? Academy Award winning film about an American involved in the Russian Revolution in 1918?
Right.
No.
No way.
Absolutely not.
Nobody takes chances. I don't even know if Mel Brooks, if they would have let him make The Producers.
Right.
Today.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different world. And most of these people, didn't come from filmmaking backgrounds. I always say, if you're a creative person, you're going to create. And if you can't, well, then become an agent or an executive. And well, it's true. But, the best ones knew how to utilize talent and trust talent. And they had a respect for different ideas. And I don't believe that kind of thinking is prevalent.
Well, just on that topic of remakes and all of that, not to encourage this type of behavior, but if you were to remake Jingle All the Way today, again with modern actors, actresses, like who would you? One, what would the story be about? Like, right now, obviously, we're going through a Jingle All the Way-esque situation where like the PlayStation 5 is so hard to get a hold of. They're so limited in quantity, and you got people just like refreshing their web browsers sometimes, just waiting for one to be available. So if you were to redo it, like, do you have an idea of what the story might be?
I never thought about redoing it, and all of a sudden you filled me with great fear that someone's going to remake it.
Oh God! Well, I think I like the question, and I think the conversation we had about this was kind of like, and the scene just played behind us where they're in the diner and they're kind of fighting to get to the phone booth. And I was watching it the other night, and I was like, man, it's crazy, like to think that if it was in the modern time, they would have just pulled out their phones, Googled Santa's reindeer,
that's so funny,
and freaking called the radio station. But like, I love, and like to what you were talking about that classic comedy, those classic comedy gimmicks. Like, you kind of had that slapstick in the phone booth, and like, what would you even do now? Like, you wouldn't. And we also had a conversation.
Just it. Jingle All the Way is now so old. No one has a cell phone in the movie.
Exactly.
I did not own one in 1996.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it totally works for the movie. And
oh yeah,
it's fun to watch.
Well, it was real, guys.
It's real.
Still
Yeah.
payphones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess back on Estevan's question, if you were, let's say you were forced to remake the movie today, what modern actors would you want to be in this movie? Like, who would take Arnold?
I don't know. Is it funny to have Christopher Pratt, or is it funnier to have Charlie Day?
Ooh, Charlie Day. Yeah. I'm all Charlie Day all day for that one.
Yeah, I like that.
There's so many different elements involved in casting something like that. There's so many different levels of approvals now, and it's all about their overseas numbers and everything. It's a lot of the spontaneity has gone out of the process, and it's become in many respects homogenized, and it's filtered through people who don't take chances on anything.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people, you still see great movies. I don't see as many as I used to. That's for sure. And today, I believe that we're in the last throes of the movie theater experience. I think the studios are playing catch up pretty fast, with owning their own streaming services and putting, our screening in Tucson was at the Fox Theater in Tucson, a beautiful deco movie palace built by William Fox in 1929, right before he lost all its money in the stock market crash. But he built these temples to movie going in Atlanta, in Detroit, in St. Louis, in Tucson. They had 2 theaters, and up and down the West Coast, and thousands of seats and stunning, literally as fancy as any old church you've ever seen. And it was about this communal experience and making movie going special, right? That it was to be something unique. And I don't think they ever foresaw that you could have a 6 or 7 foot screen in your living room with the sound bar and Dolby sound and digital delivery. And all that would be lost, except I think we'll always have revival houses. And I hope to share in that experience, because that is the way it was intended, from the time that people fled when they first saw a railroad engine coming towards them on the street, and they all got up and ran out of the theater. They thought it was going to kill them. Sure. I don't know if that would have happened at home.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about on the last podcast how it's just a totally different feeling to go to a theater and see a movie versus watching it at home. The experience is so different.
The last time I went to a theater, I'm sorry to say, my wife and I were the only people in it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
And going to see, this wasn't the James Bond film. This was Billy Crystal and Tiffany Haddish's film, which was only in theaters last spring. And we double masked and went to the theater, and we were alone. And no, actually, I went to see Ghostbusters. This is interesting. There was no one to sell you a ticket. Even though I bought mine online, there was no one to take a ticket.
Wow.
Right. It was just walk on in, Yep. And it just kind of reflects the stat. And that was an afternoon show. I'm sure on a Saturday night it may be different, but it just kind of said to me, geez, no one's at the wheel here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to think how everything might just be so automated to limit human contact. Like there's really just something about being in there. There's a smell in the air. There's a feel. There's like, I'm someone that I like.
Floors are sticky.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. I gotta have my floor sticky.
No, I remember the first movie I took my oldest daughter to. She was 18 months old, and we took her to E.T. And it was a packed house. And, when E.T. came back to life, 18 months old, she starts applauding. So, her very first movie. And she was not only sucked into the experience, but embedded in the story as well, and felt like a participant in the storytelling. And I don't know if we're going to be seeing much of that in the future,
Yeah, and like Matt was saying, with the new SpiderMan coming out and these big movies like this, like there is an energy in the theater when everyone's experiencing something for the first time, and there's some people who will cheer and clap and all that kind of stuff. There's just something to it that you don't get at home.
Yeah, no, they're saying SpiderMan may do $300 million in its opening weekend worldwide, which is funny because Chris Columbus said while we were making Jingle All The Way, he said, one of these days, a movie's going to have $100 million weekend.
Wow. Unbelievable.
But to give you context, now that the Flintstones set the Memorial Day gross record, the 5-day record, at $37.2 million.
Wow.
Replacing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade at $35.2.
Wow.
Insane.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's a quarter of a century, and my God, if you look at what is the highest grossing film probably of all time, it's if you put everything in contemporary dollars, it may very well be Birth of a Nation or Gone with the Wind, where people paid a quarter to see Gone with the Wind.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. So I guess my question would be, what are some good movies or what are some good filmmakers who you think shine in this time?
Everybody's doing amazing work as far as I can see. I mean, I pick them wisely, I think.
Yeah.
I am rarely disappointed by something. Red Notice, I'll admit, was a bit of a disappointment to me. But you know, I try and find the films that I want to like to begin with.
Yeah, sure.
And I think everyone does. And I think that the menu is so huge today that sometimes, you know, like a Chinese restaurant, you know, where they give you the 8-page menu, that you just don't know what to order anymore, and you just are fine. Egg roll, rice, fine. I just want to eat. You know?
Right, it's like going to Cheesecake Factory and they give you the 20-page menu.
Yes, but then you eventually have to get out of your chair there. So, but the Cheesecake Factory, did you ever notice now, you know, restaurants with like more than 50 outlets have to put the calories. I don't think there's a dish on the Cheesecake Factory that's less than a week of federal guidelines.
Yep, I think so.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, it's pretty much poison at that point.
But what isn't, huh?
Right,
exactly.
Well, now I'm someone who I love hearing all the like behind the scenes untold stories of movies. Like, oh, you know, did you know when Leo slams this glass down in Django, he really did cut his hand and he just kept going with the scene. I love all that kind of stuff. And improv scenes, like this wasn't even originally in the script. I love all those kinds of things. So you have quite a number of big names in this movie, including comedians. Jim Belushi and Sinbad. Were there anything?
And Phil
like
Hartman, the great Phil Hartman. Everybody had a green light. You know,
to just go.
Particularly Sinbad, you know, like to go off and over a series of takes say, well, this worked and that didn't. So why don't we go from this bit to that bit? And eventually, you know, and I think a lot of what helped that was the years I spent working with Robin Williams and Jonathan Winters on Mork and Mindy. I never had an improv background, but it really, to write for them, you had to learn sort of to think like them, and to think like them gave you a greater appreciation for the spontaneity. And a lot of comedy writing is spontaneous. But that's a lot different sitting in a room knowing you got 6 or 7 more shots if you don't come up with the joke, than being in the moment and creating something. And Sinbad was very clever, and Phil Hartman was just tops. Several lines just off the top of his head, you know, you know, him and Rita were walking out of the scene where Arnold's humiliated for stealing his neighbor's kid's present. And Phil, luckily the cameraman, when he stopped, the cameraman, you know, stayed with him, focused, didn't keep going. He turned and just, you can't bench press your way out of this one.
Yeah.
It literally just came on the screen right when you said it. I swear to God, the moment you said it came on.
So many lines, you know, so it said, can you come over and fix my porch light? I have just the tool for the job. and you know, Sinbad liked to go out, and Jim likes to improvise, and it was a Second City guy, as was his brother John, and Bill Murray and Gilda Radner, and generations and generations of comedic actors. And so the thing about Jingle is you planned for every detail and then left ourselves open for the improvisational thought and moment, and often had to recreate because what you'd planned wasn't going to happen. So what are you going to do instead in the moment? So you know, those skills come in handy there, plus having a great crew who can then roll with the punches and not, well, we just set up the wiring's all on the other side. You know, you know, all my films, particularly Beethoven, where I was not the original director, and really had John Hughes wrote the original script under his pen name, Edmond Dantes, who I believe was the man in the Iron Mask. Those of you who know literature, and a great cast: Bonnie Hunt and Charles Grodin, David Duchovny, Patricia Heaton, Oliver Platt, Stanley Tucci, Dean Jones. And we made up about half the movie as we went along. You know, particularly with the dog and working with puppies and stuff, you know what they're going to do.
Oh, yeah.
So we just kind of made it up. And Ivan Reitman, an amazing, talented person, doesn't get all the props that he really deserves. But he said to me in that sweet way of his, if it doesn't work, fix it.
That's true. Words to live by.
And so that was a green light for us to do whatever we thought could improve the moment, could improve the scene, could help tell the story. And I made another movie like that. I am not credited, but I directed like 90% of Little Giants.
Oh, really?
Hold up.
Wow.
Yeah. Strike a generational chord there, guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Come on now.
Yeah, no, I was actually in the Caribbean. I promised my family a vacation for 2 years. And then we finally walk in the hotel room and the phone rings and it's Spielberg. And he says, I'm sending the Warner Brothers jet for you.
Oh, wow.
And I said, wait, I just got here. I need 3 days. Okay. But yeah, no, they were on day 54 of 52 and they'd shot about 20 pages. So
what happened? Why the switch?
Why the switch? Because, all right, they hired a director who didn't know how to play football. The first AD didn't know how to play football. The line producer didn't know how to play football. Steven, talented man, doesn't know how to play football.
Right.
So Walter Parks, the producer, doesn't know how to. I don't know how people grow up in America and don't know how to play football. I mean, we're talking about how long is the field? 100 yards. Wait, let me get a pencil. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was a very successful football player in my younger days, and loved the game. And they had great coaches, great kids, great second unit director, the amazing Mickey Moore, who did Raiders of the Lost Ark and all Elvis's movies.
Wow.
A legend. Seriously, he was 94 and he's still. Actually, he did all the second unit on all the dog work on 101 Dalmatians too. A legendary guy. And they were all hamstrung because they had all this talent and no one knew how to apply it. So basically I just staged a football game for most of it. And we would call a play and run it and set up the kid. Janusz Kaminski, Steven's DP, was shooting. Janusz, is from Poland, as was, all his crew, his Polish American. They would play soccer during lunch.
Oh, wow.
They were not football people.
Right.
and Janusz said, Brian, why don't we shoot it from this angle? And no, that you want to see them coming at you, not going away from you.
Right. Yes.
So it was, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I took something that was failing miserably, and the film was not financially successful. But I came in like August 8th. No, probably like August 1st. And it came out October 9th. They had 6 editors working around the clock. And the reason was they had a McDonald's tie-in set for October 8th. So that was all about getting the movie out to take advantage of the tie-in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's fair, and I love the kids in it. And for me, it was a great experience. And like Beethoven, it tests you. If you were just thrown in with people you didn't know, and you had to make a movie, and you had to be a team builder, and you had to get everybody working together for a common purpose on a common vision. And how do you accomplish that? And these weren't and Beethoven. They were not happy to see me. They were all loyal to and hired by somebody else. And it was a tough situation to go into, but I think I won them over and made a tremendously successful, overperformed, I would say, internationally especially. I remember the first time I met Steven for Flintstones. He asked me about Beethoven. He said, so what did Beethoven make overseas? I said, 80 million. He goes, 80 million? Which is $1991 for you kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And next year's its 30th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but still won't be going into profits according to Universal's bookkeeping.
So me and Elijah were talking the other day about going back to Jingle All the Way. We were talking about Jake Lloyd's performance, the kid.
Yes.
And I know you had worked with kids before in like Problem Child and some of the past
Well,
things
and
you've done
Beaver
before this,
I produced the Bad News Bears series with
Right.
8-year-old Corey Feldman and Christoph St. John and Billy Jacoby, who had all become very, very prominent performers. Sparky Marcus, who
great.
do Mary Hartman, among
Yes.
other things.
So
And I really learned how to work with kids from working with Bill Asher, who was the original director of I Love Lucy. Not the original. Jesse Oppenheimer was. He succeeded him. Did about half of the I Love Lucy's, and was the executive producer and director of Bewitched with his then wife Elizabeth Montgomery. And he used to sit on an apple box next to the lens, and he would say to the kids, da 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 da, and they would go da 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 da. Yeah, good. One more time, da 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 da. Da 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 da. Good. Almost there. One more time. Da 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 da. Cut. Print. Moving on. But what he showed me is they're 8 years old. How are they gonna? What are they drawing on to deliver lines? You know how it should sound. So help them, right? And I helped Jake Lloyd. I also brought on Walter Von Hune, who'd been the dialogue coach on Happy Days, who we had on Beaver, working with our kids there. And I brought him on to help Jake get a better performance. And so Arnold says to me, "Who's that?" And I go, "That's Walter Von Hune." Von Hune. He goes over, "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" And the next thing you know, Walter's working with Arnold too, and stayed with him. When Arnold gave his speech at the Republican convention, the keynote address, the Republican convention, it was Walter who helped him. He stayed with him all through his political career.
Oh, wow.
Helping him to become a great public speaker and all. And now I will tell you something about Jake Lloyd that his parents told me. After episode 1 came out, and everyone criticized poor Jake. Mm-hmm. They did. They thought it was a very flat performance. And I said, what happened there? And they said, well, George Lucas never spoke to him.
Thank you.
So we were talking about how you got a much better performance out of him in this than in episode 1.
That's what we were saying.
We thought he was great in it.
And I recommended when they called me when Lucasfilm called me to ask about him, I said, he's a great kid, very nice parents. But I would get someone to work with him because he needs the help. It's a huge job you anticipate him doing, and he really needs some guidance. And I remembered Ron Howard told me a story once on Happy Days that on American Graffiti, he and Richard Dreyfuss and Charlie Martin Smith and Cindy Williams and all would go behind Mel's Diner and play out scenes and give each other notes, because they didn't get the feedback from Lucas.
Wow.
Right? And that's some people's style. It was the style of the guy who was directing Little Giants. But, I don't know if, I'm not criticizing George Lucas. Certainly we know how successful he was and a man of tremendous vision.
Absolutely.
And no one has been more successful than he has. But he also depended on the greatness of his cast. And when you're talking about a 9-year-old boy who's taken the lead in one of the biggest franchises in history, give him a hand.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, you definitely did a great job with it in Jingle All the Way.
And remember, it's a much smaller part too.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely.
And it's very easy to track.
Absolutely.
And watching the bedroom scene the other day, I thought we could have done a little better there, a little more under control in places, and maybe not so hostile and big eye rolls. But we went a little far. But other than like the parade scene behind you, I think you played everything in that beautifully. And the tone wise, he's very much in tune with the film, and really did a very nice job. I love working with kids much more than adults. I find it much more.
Yeah.
You know, I used to coach, you know, my kids' baseball and basketball and football teams too, and I like helping people to achieve maximum performance, whether it's on a set or in a classroom.
Definitely. So if you had to rank working with adults, children, and dogs, what's the order of your favorite?
I like that.
Well, dogs, of course. No, dog. You know, I have never not been able to get a dog to do what I wanted to do one way or another, and I have not gotten along with dog trainers by and large either, because you know I remember the first day on Beethoven, dog trainer, you know. Let me show you what we trained him to do. And he's walking backwards on a 2x10. I don't need that. I want him to drink out of the toilet and steal food off the table like my dog does. And all we got to do for that is just not feed him for a bit, or don't give him some water. Then take him over to the goldfish bowl and he'll drink.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, we don't want to keep you for too much longer. We would actually really love to have you back because there's just so much more to talk about, I think, than we could ever put in one episode.
When the book comes out in the fall, we will be happy to tell stories from our entire career and cover the spectrum of pop culture, toy collecting, and the intersection with my career.
Love it.
Which everything I've done practically ended up with lunchboxes, games, figures, and it. You know, they're still making Happy Days toys. They're still making Flintstone toys. They're still making
Tony the Tiger. I've seen.
Toys. He's great. Even though I say in the book, it probably pains him as it does me to hear him say, they're part of a balanced breakfast.
So when does that book come out again?
That will be out in the fall, available for pre-order, hopefully early in 2022. Okay. So keep your eyes open, and it's enormous, both physically. It's like a foot tall and almost 500 pages. Wow. It's a coffee table book you can use as a coffee table.
That's awesome. Well, you obviously have a huge collection just behind you right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a piece of my Flintstones.
Yeah. So also I love seeing your Instagram, which you always post different collectibles and toys. So be sure to follow Brian on Instagram.
Yes, at Brian Levant, please. And then you'll get the first information of where and how to order the book. And there's even going to be a limited edition with a spectacular lenticular cover, I hope, and a limited edition photograph as well.
Oh, awesome.
And a clam box and stuff. So please, My Life in Toys, it's been a pleasure seeing you guys. Make another movie. Make a big one. Go for it. Okay?
Absolutely.
Yes,
I'm gonna buy your book. I'll have you sign it, and I'm gonna have it right here on my coffee table when it comes out. And to everyone listening, again, this has been Brian Levant, director of Jingle All The Way. Follow him on Instagram. We'll put everything in the show notes, and be sure to watch out for his book coming out. As you're listening to this, it comes out on Christmas Eve, so happy holidays to everyone.
And just remember, it's turbo time again.
It's turbo time!
Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you,
we
Brian.
really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Nice job, guys. Nice
Thanks.
job.
Thank you.
Well, this is Red Band Podcast, baby. Movies, music, conspiracies, deep existential crises. It's all inside and it's all unfiltered. So let's get started.